Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm happy to have Gina Yarrish with us. Gina was once an orphan and now a millionaire. She's founder and CEO of Yarcort, an experiential learning center to help small businesses and solo entrepreneurs over their self-sabotage and their fears of selling by mastering sales from the inside out. She's also a best-selling author of Harness Your Purpose, Power, and Peace. Her contagious positive energy will leave you inspired and hunger for more. Gina, it's so great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Stephan. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's first of all talk about how you got started with your relationship with horses, because we're going to talk about equine therapy and equine learning, or equine assisted learning, or horse assisted learning. We're going to talk all about horses, but you've got a great origin story, I'm sure. So let's hear it and see where horses came into your life and in what powerful ways.
Well, you know, Stephan, horses, I was 35 when I got involved with horses. So I didn't grow up with them. I grew up in the city just outside of New York, a small town called Clifton, New Jersey. And I was in the business of real estate. It was a business that the family that had adopted me, I had learned. I was passionate about it at the time. Unfortunately, there was a lot of traits or beliefs that I had acquired from the people that had raised me on how to do business and how to live life and what I should be doing. And by the time I was 35 years old, I was having a heart catheterization. So
Wow.
It was definitely something where I had to take a look back at life and say, you know, even though I was very successful, we had started a family foundation of real estate. I had 4 kids. I was married. I was self-employed. Life was definitely on a major roller coaster. And so that heart catheterization was kind of, I look at like this big memo from the big guy upstairs that said, let me make things clear for you. This is not the way that you're supposed to be doing it. So instead of leading my life every day the way I was, I decided to start listening to other things around me. And one of the things was that my kids, we had a 160-acre farm up in Northeast Pennsylvania that we were thinking of retiring at some point. And the kids had said, why can't we move there now? We had come here often and, you know, they rode quads and they hunted and, you know, we had a big 35-foot travel trailer at the time. So we thought, well, how can we make this work? So my husband, as a veteran, was eligible for retirement at 42. And so we decided to retire, and he would be a stay-home mom and I would commute. And now I have this 160-acre farm, and it's like, well, now I can have horses, and who can teach me? So I went out and I found a instructor, Pat Pirelli, who taught me natural horsemanship. And Stephan, it didn't take long. You have to think, you know, so when I had my heart catheterization, it was interesting because, you know, the doctors always say there's good news and there's bad news, right? So the good news was there was nothing wrong with me. And it's like, well, how is that possible? I felt like I had 10,000 pounds of, you know, bricks on my chest. And he said, well, the bad news is that it's all in your head. Now you have to think about a really strong, confident businesswoman that was just very dominant and bold and sassy. I guess you could call it like the Jersey attitude. I don't know. But that was me. And had I not had as much anesthesia when he was telling me this, I probably would have gotten off the table and decked him because I really didn't understand what that meant. And what he was trying to tell me was that my thinking patterns and how I allowed myself to think and look at life and what I believed about life was what was causing what was happening to me. You know, I mean, you and I know, I mean, most often it's like people treat the shoulders down and not the head up. Or they're treating the head up and not the shoulders down. So when I started studying about natural horsemanship, I never knew a horse had a belly button. But even though the external part of my energy was very calm, the internal part of my energy was like the fastest moving roller coaster. So every time I tried to play with the horse, he fed off of my energy and was constantly on his rear legs. But after about 6 months of working with him, we started to build a relationship, and there was harmony together. And we were moving, you know, harmoniously throughout the arena. And that one epiphany was I wasn't thinking anymore. That I thought I had a bigger problem because, what led to the heart catheterization really was the fact that I couldn't turn off my mind. My mind was constantly going. You put your head down on the pillow at night, and I'm sure there's many listeners that can relate to this, right? You put your head down on the pillow at night and your mind gets faster and you can't sleep. And then you've got this whole insomnia thing going on. And then you start taking pills, and it's like this spiral of downward transition, which is so unhealthy. So in playing with the horse, the first thing that he showed me was how to be present. Think about taking any addict, whether it's sugar, cell phone, alcohol, sex, no matter what it is. Any addict, if you tell them to stop doing something, it's nearly impossible. But playing with this 1,200-pound animal made it so easy because I couldn't focus on anything else because I had 1,200 pounds in front of me, And so that was the first real epiphany, was that, wow, I had stopped taking my medicine. I felt better. When I went for my 6-month checkup after we relocated to Pennsylvania, the doctors here wanted to know why I was coming for a heart scan. And I thought, what do you mean? Well, whatever they saw before, there was no signs of it after. So at that point, I began to start studying more about what they called psychotherapy in horses. And I thought, this is powerful. People have to know about this, but not just in a therapeutic way for autistic children or children in itself, but more and veterans, right? We hear so much about therapy and veterans and children and so forth, but just, everyday people. A lot of people don't want therapy. So I went out and I studied the therapeutic model of equine assisted psychotherapy. And unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, and again, I can feel that many people can relate to it, is that you want to be able to accomplish what you set out to accomplish. And if there's roadblocks in the way, well, then get out of the way. We have to do something different. And in the therapeutic model, here I had the arena, I had the horses, I had the program, but I couldn't operate without a counselor in the arena. And so it became very challenging to do that business model. That I found an organization called Equine Experiential Education. And through them, I studied and was certified, which their model is more of coaching. Coaching, corporate training, team building, leadership, things like that.
That is super cool. I love that story. I love how open and vulnerable you are to share that, and how it really was a gift that transformed you. A lot of times we see things as tragic or low points in our lives, but yet they bring us to such incredible epiphanies, such incredible transformations, metamorphoses. Right? So you went from a caterpillar to a butterfly, but it took a heart catheterization for you to make that shift.
Yeah, and I mean, most cases people change either by choice or by trauma, and in most cases it's by trauma. It's like we wait until something significant happens before we get that big epiphany because we can't see it otherwise. We're too busy.
Yeah, too busy with the mundanities of life that really are just being on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one thing that you said about beliefs that reminded me of Tony Robbins and how he would talk about the BS standing for belief systems, and that's our biggest roadblock. If we change our beliefs, we change our life.
Mm-hmm. I think that people don't really understand. It took me a while to really grasp what that meant. What is a belief, and how does that really, what is it? Maybe it's just not conscious. People are not conscious of what their beliefs are. And because so often they're living a fast-paced life, they don't take the time even just to sit down and think about what beliefs or values they live by that are affecting them.
Yeah. And one of the primary beliefs that kind of runs our lives is the primary question. Again, I learned this from Tony Robbins. And for some woman who might have had some traumatic experience in earlier life, she might walk into a room or a new environment with the primary question of, am I safe? Or how do I stay safe? And imagine that running your life in the background. You're not even aware that that's the question you're asking yourself, but every single new scene, new scenario, you ask that of yourself. and that limits you. That changes how you interact with people, how you interact with the environment, how you would interact with animals, horses, for example. It would put you in a straitjacket. And changing that primary question to something around how do I reveal even more light in this situation can completely transform who you are, how you show up in life, and what you do with this life that you've been gifted.
Yeah, I mean, just asking yourself other questions like, or telling yourself, how can I be safe? Or what is it that I can do to be safer? What steps can I take to be safe, kind of thing. But I often ask a question along the line of how much are you investing in your thoughts? Or what thoughts are you investing in? What are they costing you? And people go, oh my God. Well, great.
That's a powerful frame. It's a reframe, because thoughts, one big reframe I got about thoughts, it happened in India when I was learning from oneness monks. It's this concept of our thoughts are not our own. And conceptually, I took that on board. Okay, so we're receivers of thoughts, kind of like a tuner or an antenna or something, stereo receiver. But we're also broadcasting thoughts too. So if we are receiving thoughts all the time that aren't our own, we don't have to have the same kind of relationship with those thoughts. We can just brush them off. We don't have to give them so much importance. We don't have to buy into them or believe them. And that's great conceptually, but it took a whole other turn earlier this year when I had this big spiritual epiphany in January, this awakening, a second awakening. The first one was in India in 2012, but the one that happened this year really did reveal a lot more about this matrix, essentially, that we're living in. And if you are, let's say, in a dark place, you're just not taking care of your vibrational state, how you're feeling, you will attract thoughts into your consciousness that are not your own, that are not of the light, that are not valuable, that are not helpful, that are disempowering, and they're not even yours. And some folks refer to these as intrusive thoughts. So and I think even a psychotherapeutic term, intrusive thoughts, but that denies the reality that they're not even yours, that they're being kind of injected into your consciousness because you've made yourself vulnerable by lowering your vibration or just unconsciously not attending to your vibration or your emotional state, emotional/spiritual state. What are your thoughts about that?
For sure, Stephan. I mean, if you think about, and again, unless you've experienced this awakening, I think a lot of people are unsure that there is a vibration, that we do vibrate at a certain, level. And that's what makes the horses so powerful when we're doing these interactions is you can be the smartest person in the world and you can have the best, knowledge and smartness and whatever it may be as far as your business is concerned. But the reality of it is what's going on internally is more important. And that energy, so take, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. And we had someone here that was in the financial spectrum, and he was a team leader of about 6 other advisors. And when he came into the arena and we did a particular activity with them, most people would say that he was more of the bully, so he used his words to manipulate people in order to get them to, and in a sense it was, he didn't know any better and they were using it in a way where it would help to motivate other people. But when you bring that into the arena with a 1,200-pound horse, it doesn't work. And so he realizes you're already creating the image, right? Go ahead, make me. And so now they can see the vibration of your words are manipulating people because you're giving them that auto-suggestion and putting ideas into their thoughts and their minds that then creates a vibration for them. And people are not taking control of their own thoughts or their own vibrations. One of the things that I've learned over the years of going out on the stage and speaking was I would put myself into this sexy glass vase. And I call it sexy because I feel I'm really sexy. But when I put myself in this sexy glass vase, then anything that would come at me, right, it would just bounce off. It would bounce off and it would go back to wherever it needed to go so that I could keep my vibration level up to what I needed to. And the conscious awareness of, especially when you're speaking, is at the end of the day, when I did go out and speak, Stephan, I was so drained. You ask my teams, it used to take me 3 days to recover because people just sucked that energy out of me. And then, once you realize what's happening, and again, it goes back to that conscious awareness. People have to be first aware of where they want to go in life and create their own thoughts and beliefs and patterns and stop worrying about what other people think because it's really none of their business. Yeah. I mean, I think media goes back to, like, a lot of times people watch media and it's like a complete no-no in our house for about 8 years now. It just influences us terribly in ways that you can't imagine. And then you set your whole day up like that.
Yeah, so true. I don't watch news. I try to stay off of social media for the most part, but I do have days where I get sucked in.
We're only human.
So much healthier to stay off the news websites, to not watch TV. It's just it's a game changer. And I want to also circle back to something you said earlier that ties into this whole idea of vibration and receptivity to the good vibrations, and to protecting yourself, having boundaries, like for you, the vase,
yeah,
from the negative vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you said a memo. You got a memo from above, and how this ties in for me is I just interviewed Perry Marshall several weeks ago, and that episode, by the time this episode airs, the Perry Marshall episode will have been out. Perry Marshall is known for being an expert on Google Ads and on the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. He's got books out on these topics. Fantastic marketer. Now he's gone spiritual. And that's something I didn't expect. I didn't really know him very well to know that that's been a part of his life for many years. But this book that is just out is called Memos from the Head Office. And it is all about receiving these memos, being receptive to getting these memos, and then taking powerful next actions on those memos. And so I'm reading the book now. Finally, I hadn't read it before interviewing him, but we had a fantastic conversation. Some really moving stories that he shared, not just from his own personal experience, but from some of the people he interviewed for the book. And so I'd like to explore this a little further with you about the memo that you received. The heart catheterization that you received was a wake-up call, but it was a wake-up call that wasn't just kind of because of the law of cause and effect. It was a memo from the head office. So how did you receive it as that, and how did you know?
I don't know that I consciously was aware of it when it happened. I think it's something that came to me later on when I started to look at just life in itself and being grateful. The difference between being ungrateful and grateful. I don't know that it necessarily makes you a bad person, just that you're not aware. And there were signs along the way prior to the whole catheterization. For instance, even just people saying, you seem really on edge, take a break, go, take a vacation. So there was all these little tiny signs along the way when I think back. Because they say that, God will send people your way when you need it. It's just a matter of whether or not you're willing to listen to what others are going to say. The same way, I don't believe that there's coincidences. I believe they happen intentionally and for a reason. But until you're awake, you don't really see them because you're so busy living life and being, and a lot of times selfish, that you don't see any of that stuff. And so once I had the heart catheterization and I moved up to Northeast Pennsylvania, I took my, go back to Benjamin Hardy, I had to take myself out of the environment, right?
Benjamin's going to be on this podcast, by the way. I'm interviewing him next week.
Oh, beautiful. I love the book that Dan and him just did. Gap. I can't think of the title of it at the moment.
Oh, Who Not How? Or
No. They did that one last year.
The Gap and the Gain?
The Gap and the Gain. They just came out, yeah. But looking back of all the signs or blessings or, whichever you have that came along the way, it made me realize that the more we slow down and we look at life itself and what it is that we want to be able to create, the more messages are there for you to receive. I don't know about you, and I don't know how you feel about it, but when you think about your higher consciousness and you can ask your higher consciousness questions, when you have these internal conversations, you wonder if the answers that you're getting when you're questioning things, if they're coming from that higher purpose or they're just you answering them. And, I've just come to realize that sometimes when you ask really good questions, you get powerful answers. And those powerful answers, whether or not you want to believe it, they just come from that higher self, Yeah. So, but again, it goes back to, you have to first be awakened and conscious of how to live a conscious life, live life on purpose. A lot of people, when you talk about having that life and business balance in a sense, again, that all goes back to that conscious awareness. And a lot of people don't realize that their mind is a muscle and you have the potential to control it, but you first have to take the time, like anything, take the time and think through it. And then through practice and repetition and so forth. One of the techniques that we have, we've branded is called the focus forward technique. So everything that people do here in the arena is always about, what is it that they're looking to create in a sense. So I'll give you an example, Stephan. One of our clients, when we first started this business, she came in and she had about 28 years worth of therapy. And it's pretty sad. So someone to stay in therapy that long and not really get any help doesn't say much. Well, when we came into the arena and we said, well, if we leave all of that life behind, all of those things, unfortunately she had been sexually molested many of times. But if you live all of that behind of who you are, and we just focus from this day forward on the life that you want to be able to create, what would you do? And the hardest thing that people have to do is think. I think it was Albert Einstein said it, the hardest thing that people have to do is think in the direction of what it is that they want. And we don't take the time to do it. So if we first start with that thinking of what it is that we want, there's this conscious awareness that begins to open up and evolve. And the heart starts to beat at a different rhythm and the energy starts to, come out of them. And it's always interesting to see how the energy flows from their feet up when they're in the arena. We do really crazy things to bring out that inner child in people because that's what creates those vibrations. That's what brings them back to that person that they need to be, that authentic self that they need to be. And then as long as they can think of something bigger than where they're at, life begins to evolve in the direction that they want, as long as they stay steadfast and positive. Right? It doesn't mean that we're not human. We're not going to hit hiccups on the way. Think of driving down the road and, all of a sudden you hit the little divots on the side. Okay, you don't just go off the road. You put yourself back on the road and, you keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so what would be another example of a technique that is very helpful that you can get in the arena working with a horse that's very hard to receive or achieve in other modalities?
Well, if you think about when in any type of learning, you're going out and there's all this intake, and then we go into the world and whatever we know to do based on what we've learned to this point, we're going to take out. And so I'm trying to think of a good example. If you're only going to do what your conscious mind knows to do, right? And the hardest thing that I said was to help people to think in a direction of what it is that they want. Well, when you step into the arena, regardless of whatever modality that you're in or that you're trying to do, learning, webinars, therapy, whatever it may be, with the horses, these on-the-ground interactions that we create with specific objections, it forces the human to look at themselves from the inside. It's not an outside action, it's an inside thought. And so that's where it begins to condition how they think about what it is they're doing, why they're doing it, and what can they do differently. Because the horse doesn't answer you back. So for instance, if you're communicating with the horse and you just have to ask them to do something and the horse isn't doing it, what is it that you're communicating, right? Because the only thing that the horse demands really is confidence, right? They want that alpha person. That's it. And if you don't have that alpha person, then either you're going to push the horse or the horse is going to push you. And so what does the communication look like? And we bring it back to, well, then where does that happen in life? And that's where those big epiphanies happen. Because it forces them to look at the experience that they've had with the horse. And then where does that happen in life when when it forces them to look inside themselves and say, hey, what's going on out there? Well, the horse isn't listening to me. Okay. Well, why isn't the horse listening to me? Well, I don't know. I don't know any horse techniques. It doesn't really matter. Where is it in life that people don't listen to you? And then all of a sudden they go, So I believe that this business was created not because I created it, but because he created it for me, that God put me into this place. I've often looked up to the big skies and I said, I don't understand why me. But it fills my soul to such degree because it's a beautiful sight to see people have their epiphanies every single session. It is the most powerful form of transformation because it's not anything outside themselves. It's what's inside that forces them to change.
Yeah, and a lot of what we are looking for in the outside, answers, guidance, direction, our purpose, breakthroughs, it's all inside of us. And I didn't really understand what that meant until this year, until I had the big awakening and I could kind of see the matrix. And so the conceptual idea of this is that you're going to go within and you're going to quiet your mind and listen to the depths of your soul. Sounds good. But in this new level of realization for me, what's inside is actually what's outside because I'm a receiver. And if I'm receiving thoughts from the inside that are high vibration, that are coming from my spiritual guides and teachers, my angelic team and spiritual cheerleaders, that may feel like it's coming from the inside, but it's actually coming through the inside, right. Which is a little different nuance to it that I didn't appreciate until this year.
Yeah. Again, it all falls back. I think, it's never about the destination that we're headed to. It's usually, for me, it's about the journey to get there.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious to hear your thoughts around equine therapy as a modality and the horse whisperer Monty Roberts and resorts like Miraval that offer equine therapy. I actually went to a retreat at Miraval and worked with some horses there. It was really cool. That was my first and only so far experience with equine therapy or equine assisted anything, and it was powerful. So I'm curious your thoughts on all these.
Well, Monty Roberts is an amazing man. In fact, he's the gentleman that taught Pat Pirelli, my mentor, that had taught me about horses. And, there's a difference between people having a transaction versus having a relationship. And, if you look at Monty Roberts, it was all about building relationships. And it didn't matter whether it had a voice or not, but he took the time to understand. And if you look at the Pirelli methods, they take it down to, him and Pat and Linda Pirelli at that time, took it down to horsenalities. And so understanding the different horsenalities help people to understand humanalities, right? And our personalities. I'll give you an example of that. So married 30 years, have 4 kids. My husband's a 12-year veteran of the Army and retired from the Sheriff's Department. So there's like one way to do something and that's it. On the flip side of it, I was the, spontaneous, outgoing, just try it anyway. There's no right way to do anything. So you talk about complete opposites. But when I started to study horsemanship and thinking about Monty Roberts and the Patel methods, one of the horses was what we would call a left brain introvert. He was extremely intelligent, extremely spiritual. He's the only horse that I could ride where if I thought about the things that I wanted to do, he would do them before I asked for it. It was the most impactful relationship that I've ever had with a horse. But when I was learning the natural ways to move horses and have relationships with them and develop that, him having that left brain introverted personality and I was a left brain extrovert, at times it created a lot of frustration. So if I asked him to do something and he didn't want to do it, it would get ugly because that, just damn it, listen to me. And so the more I played with this left brain introverted horse, the more I realized I was having a relationship with my husband. And so the better I got with becoming provocative about how I approached this relationship with the horse, the more I got him to move his feet. So I'll give you an example. If I wanted my husband to go to dinner and I said, hey, babe, let's go to dinner tonight, he'd say, nope, not happening. It's not on my agenda. I need like 3 weeks notice. But if I said to him, oh my God, you remember that steak we had like 2 weeks ago? I don't know about you, but the mushrooms and the onions. And then I'd let it go. And most often, 15, 20 minutes later, he would say, why don't we go to dinner tonight? Well, I would, one for me, yay. Well, but that's something that the horse taught me. So if I wanted to motivate this horse, what motivated him was food, right? Or, he didn't necessarily, had to cause my idea to be his idea. So if I wanted him to go forward, I'd ask him to go back. And he'd go back a couple times and go, well, why are we going back? This is dumb. I want to go forward. And then he would put gumption and energy into going forward. And so all of the reasons why I played with the horses, I was developing myself. And in developing myself, I created a new person that now I have healthier and better relationships, not only with my husband, but with my family. And it's also taught me a lot about boundaries. You talk about, having that life-business balance. When you play with horses, you have to learn boundaries because if not, you've got a 1,200-pound horse that has no problem pushing you around. And how do you stand up to that no? How do you say no to somebody without hurting somebody's feelings? So Monty Roberts, therapy, they're all, if you look back, it all has to do with the conscious mind of allowing someone else to teach you in a way that doesn't have to do with words. And everything that you're doing is forcing yourself to look inside. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, even listening, that if they were to look inside, it's pretty scary. And that's where you need to go. Because if you want anything on the outside of your life to be different, the first place and the easiest place for you to change, as hard as it may seem, is inside. Because as soon as you change the inside, the outside always responds differently.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is powerful stuff. So if somebody wanted to start a process of equine anything, and they've never ridden a horse, they've never had much interaction with a horse before, maybe they even live in an urban environment and it's not really that practical, it's not like there are horse farms nearby, how would you suggest somebody get started in this area?
As far as being part of a program or actually learning how to do horse-assisted learning?
How to receive the benefits of working with horses, and not necessarily to learn how to ride, but to have a powerful experience? Do they just book a week-long or weekend-long retreat? Do they start a program where they might have to, I don't know, meet with someone assisting them and the horses on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, maybe drive an hour to get there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what would you suggest to somebody who wants to start on this path?
Well, for starters, Stephan, feel free to reach out to me and have that conversation. I'm sure you're going to share my contact information. There's people all around the world that, and believe it or not, now that we've had this conversation, people are going to see more either assisted therapy sessions or equine assisted learning sessions, or farms around, just by having the conversation. But definitely connect with me. The other thing is that there's different types of programs. For instance, our programs, we've had clients from Germany, Ireland, Australia. We've had people come from all over the world, to either train with us on a professional level with regards to their business, doing equine assistant learning. Or we've had people come, I have one client that drives an hour and a half once a month. And that one session is extremely powerful, that it's the one thing that she looks for every month, is to come back out here. And it really depends on the learning process, right? And how much we can absorb and apply, and how fast that process is. Because in the beginning, when we're first becoming consciously aware of things and being awakened, it's kind of like being fed from a fire hydrant. That pace of how much we take in and absorb at a time really depends on the individual. So, there's programs out there where they can do one sessions once a month, once a quarter. For us, we have 3-day retreats that we do. We have an upcoming business retreat that we're doing called Heart-Centered Sales. It really just contacting a local farm that has horses and inquiring to see whether or not they do horse-assisted learning or psychotherapy. The only difference between the two models is one is they're both therapeutic, either way, no matter how you look at it, because it's taking you on that inside journey. But on a counseling side, the therapeutic side, you're with a counselor. They're usually more severe cases, veterans, Ptsd, things like that. People that have had severe trauma related. On the flip side of it, when you're looking at horse-assisted learning or equine-assisted learning, it's more of a coaching modality. And so there's objective lessons that people are looking to learn. For us, we work with those small business solo entrepreneurs that really have some struggles around, fears of selling, being rejected, have those internal conversations that talk themselves out of things. What we want to do is be able to build that communication, build that confidence, so that they can go out and really, conquer what they're looking to do. And the fastest way that we see doing it is through horses, because every single session they have is 100% positive change.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Let's talk about some of the more extreme scenarios with people who have PTSD or have autism or some other really life-interfering issue to deal with.
It's not my specialty, so I can't say a lot about it. We have had people that have mild cases of PTSD or ADHD or ADD. What I've seen in using the focus forward technique is that in therapy, a lot of times they're always taking them back into the past, and there's this pattern of continuing to going back in the past that doesn't help them to get out of it. And so for us, it's like, yes, that happened, acknowledge it, but now what is it that we're going to do to move forward? And so in conditioning the mind to think from a future result, and then building the sessions behind that help support it, we see them have great success. On a severe level, working with a therapist and using the horses, I hear really, really great things, but it's just not my specialty. So I can't really talk too much about that. It was therapy.
I'm curious, what would be an example of something that you'd heard was a huge breakthrough for somebody, let's say, with autism? I wouldn't have connected the dots between autism, therapeutic modalities, and horses. But now that you mentioned autism as one of those things that can be addressed through working with horses. That makes total sense to me. I'm just curious, is there a particular example or resource or anecdote that comes to mind in relation to autism?
When we talk about autism, there was a great farm that I did my internship with years ago, and they worked with autistic children. One of the things that I know that's very impactful with using horses in autistic children is the bilateral movement of the body stimulates the part of the brain that's not functioning. So they've seen tremendous amount of results with autistic children and the use of horses. Now, the therapeutic riding is usually where autistic children would go. And so it's specific to a riding program. So the modality is much different. And the equine assistant psychotherapy, it's you can do both. You can do riding as well as on the ground activities with a counselor. Equine assistant coaching in the models that we've used is specifically on the ground. There's no riding involved. There's no experience necessary. It's just interaction with the horses on the ground, and we create different metaphors.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's lots of fun. Every activity that we repeat, because we have certain ones that we can, conditionally keep using for different things. And every time we have people coming in to do this, the horses show up different all the time, right? Because they show up based on the energy that's coming into the room. And the epiphanies that they have is just amazing what the horses can show them. It's just breathtaking sometimes. Now, granted, we have people that fall to their knees and end up crying, not because we want them to, but just something magical happens, and there's no explanation for it. And it's kind of like that, memo from above. For other people, I've gotten calls 2 and 3 years later saying, that damn horse, and all of a sudden there's a light bulb that went off. But the reason why they remember it is because of the experiential experience that they have. It creates an emotion, and the emotion creates a vibration. So it's always interesting every time anyone's in the arena to watch and see the beauty that just happens.
And I would guess that you can build these kinds of relationships and the kind of rapport and breakthroughs, not just with horses, but with other animals. And one particular animal comes to mind when I say this, and that is an elephant named Tara, an Indian elephant I met in India, in Jaipur. And we got to ride on her, and we got to paint on her and wash her and feed her sugar cane and all that. It was really a beautiful, amazing experience. But that animal, that elephant, has a special place in my heart, and also in my wife Orion's heart. It's just unexplainable, and we have a soul connection now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that animal's soul was in other lifetimes that I had. If you would have told me I'd be talking like this a year ago, I would have thought that was crazy. But this idea of...
I hear one body, many souls.
Yeah. I'm curious, have you heard much about other animals, whether they're Indian elephants or dogs or whatever else, having huge therapeutic benefits and having these kind of more soulful connections that lead to big epiphanies and breakthroughs? I'm sure you must have heard of many.
I hear it very often, especially with dogs. It's more heartwarming, especially like the service dogs and things like that. The big
emotional support animals. Yes.
Yeah. The big difference between, like, for instance, the horse versus a dog is, the dog becomes your companionship in the sense of, it's emotionally there for support. You feed it, you nurture it, you groom it, so forth. Even though you may do the same things with a horse, the horse doesn't look for a steak or a pat on the back. That fight or flight personality that a horse has is very similar to a human. And so, if you think about horses out in the wild, the only thing that they're living to protect themselves from is being eaten. So when you're working with horses, it demands that alpha in you, right, to rise up, where the dog is going to make you feel comfortable, safe, and so forth. I don't know about elephants, but you'll have to share where you were, because it sounds like a beautiful experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I'd have to look up the name of the place that we went. I'll look it up and I'll include it in the show notes. Yeah, and
cool.
I'll send it to you as well. Yeah. So we're getting close to time here. I wanted to circle back on a couple more topics to expand on those a bit further. One is your I'd love to hear your concept of the higher self. And before you share yours, I'll just quickly share what I see now as my new understanding from this year of higher self is one of like the other part of your soul that's connected to you, and to your soul that's in the physical body, connected by what's referred to as the silver cord. And that other part of your soul is up in the heavens and sees the bigger picture, sees all your past lives and where things are heading, and time is non-existent up there. It really is the eternal now, past, present, and future all happening simultaneously, and it's like you're sitting in the center of a train track that goes in a circle, and that higher self, that also known as light avatar, that part of your soul that's up in the heavens, can see all the perspectives of past, present, and future and say, oh, you know what, don't turn right today, turn left, because I can see what that's going to lead to is going to be amazing. And if you turn right, if you turn the wrong way, which you're used to turning, that's going to lead to some pain that is unnecessary. Let's steer you in a different direction than if you listen to the intuitive hit and you follow it. Then you get all these beautiful blessings and amazing opportunities and stuff. So listening to that higher self is really important. And seeing that, having that position of being in the center of the circle, the train track, be able to see past, present, and future, where the train is heading as well as where it went, is really, really powerful. So that's my new view of higher self as of in the last 8 months. I'm curious to hear more from your perspective about the higher self.
Yeah, I've never looked at it from two different perspectives, like there's being more than one soul, one that's, that higher self here guiding us, and then something that's bigger than us, or up in seeing.
Or I wouldn't say different souls. I would say another part of your soul, the part of your soul that's up in the heavens, connected to the part of your soul that is connected to your body.
Well, my internal journey of being awakened started about 10 years ago, but the soul part of the journey didn't happen until this past year in April, and really understanding. There was a great book that I read that really made me think about life itself. It was by Brian Weiss, actually. I think he's down by you in the Miami area, and he wrote a book called One Body, Many Souls. And it made me realize,
Many Lives, Many Masters, I've actually been reading. It's fantastic.
Okay, I haven't read that
one of his books.
Yeah. I actually did a regression. I've never done therapy in my life, but when I came back from Montana in April, and I read that book, I was like, gosh, I got to find someone that I want to see, there's questions that I have. I want to see if I can get answers. And I actually found someone just north of me that was trained by Brian Weiss. And so I went and I did this regression therapy that takes you back into your past souls. And it was, you want to talk about karma, but that's a whole nother conversation, from generation to generation, or from soul to soul. But, being raised in Catholicism, you don't believe in reincarnation. So it was definitely something that you had to grasp, that is it true? And, you make your own conscious, decisions as to, is it possible? And for me, it made perfect sense, why, for instance, Stephan, I was adopted, and I grew up in a very large Italian family. My adopted mother had 13 brothers and sisters. So it was a very large family, but yet I always had a passion for castles. I love castles. I love historical romances. I had no idea why, but yet when I went back into these past lives, all of a sudden I began to get answers, and so it was just absolutely amazing. And it just validates for me even more that there's, I don't know how to explain, there's something beyond us,
Yeah.
that there's something outside of us that now I think about, and this may, I send, there's times when I do meditations and I'll send my soul out, or I'll call upon somebody else's soul. Like, for instance, my husband's not a big talker. Being in the Army, he's got like a shut down personality, doesn't like small talk kind of things. And so often what I'll do is in the morning when I wake up, I'll envision my soul outside of my body and I'll call my husband's and we dance. And we get up in the morning. It's just a beautiful feeling. And it's funny how he's, since I've started to, create those visions, manifesting those visions, he's become a different person, so.
Oh, beautiful.
You're just, your soul is what lives on forever. You're just here for a short period of time. But I wasn't, I'm on my own journey. It's beautiful. I love it. The soul is just something outside of yourself that you can kind of like that advisor or that angel or that fairy or, whatever you may believe in, that you can have those internal conversations with and get guidance from. Yeah.
I did a past life regression, just one session this year, and it was with Susan Lawrence, also in the Miami area, and she was trained by Brian Weiss.
Mm-hmm.
She helped me to connect with a past life memory of a teenage boy who was dared to jump off of a bridge into the water.
Mm.
And I ended up drowning. And in that lifetime and that experience, I developed a fear of heights and water and swimming. So I don't swim. I don't know how to swim. I avoid the water. I'll go on a boat, but I don't want to get in the water. And I feel less fearful about it now that I know that about that memory.
Yeah.
And I got some validation that was not some fantastical, synaptical firings and that just, purely imagination. It was real. And in that process of the past life regression with that particular memory, the cords were cut so that I could just
move forward.
Leave that behind.
Yeah. Have
the memory, know that occurred, but not feel fearful or tied to that emotionally. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I can relate.
I haven't tried to learn how to swim so far since that session, but that was my experience.
Just dip your toe in the water.
Yeah.
For me, when I did my regression therapy, it's interesting because one of my things that I've struggled with the past, probably since the whole heart catheterization, was weight. I'm not extremely heavy, but I'm heavier than I'd like to be. And I've been going to a wellness center up in New York State for about 18 months now. And they do something called nutritional response testing. So everything is done muscle testing. And then they treat the deficiency, the different organs that have deficiencies, they treat them with dried food in capsules. So everything is natural, it's pure, it's whatever. And so it's been a beautiful journey. But when I did the regression therapy, I said to her, I want to know why I can't lose this weight. Like, I do Pilates twice a week. I ride horses. I'm active. I've got 4 grandkids. Like, I'm not a person that just sits down. And so we went back into the past lives, and in 2 of my past lives, I've died of starvation.
Wow.
And so now I'm curious, right? I get curious about, okay, well, I've been doing this health thing. I've been taking care of myself and, doing my exercises. And now I've done this regression therapy and we've cut the cord. And I'm not getting on a scale or doing any measurements until September 1st, which will be 60 days after the regression therapy that I did, to see if it actually, something shifts. Nothing else have I changed. Still eating the same way, still taking the same vitamins, still doing my Pilates, walking, horses. And I can tell you it has changed because there's clothes that I've had to put on the side because they're too big, and so it's just, I got curious. I'm like, okay, fine. Now I know that I've died of starvation. That's a past life. Let it go. Is it really going to have an impact in this body, in this time, in this future? And slowly but surely it is. So it's kind of cool.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations. Sachin Patel in Genius Network. And so that's how we know each other, through Joe Polish and Genius Network. So Sachin has introduced to me his metabolic reset protocol, and I'm in the middle of that. I'm at day 25, and I've already lost 12 pounds, which I didn't really need to lose weight. I needed to remove or to release the abdominal fat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's
what do they call it?
visceral
Vesicular?
fat that kind of chokes the internal organs.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. So that is going. That is on its way out. And I'm down to 15% body fat now, which I think is probably the lowest I've been, I don't know, since I don't know that I've ever been this low, at least since I've been measuring my body fat percentage. So this is very exciting. And I'm not even done with the program yet. I'm at day 25 of 42 days. So.
And who is that?
Sachin Patel. Yeah,
out of New Jersey?
No, he's in Canada, and he was a past guest on this podcast. The Living Proof Institute. Yeah, the livingproofinstitute.com.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
I'll have to check it out. Cool. That's exciting. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful journey when you're, I remember when I was young and dumb in a sense, before I was hit 35, but that journey since 35 and now I'm 52 has just been more and more. As I get older, I'm more grateful, and there's so many blessings when I think about all of the crazy things that I've done in my life, all the bad things that have happened, all bad things that I've caused, just different trials and tribulations. But I look back and I see there are so many blessings, and I don't know that I've shared this with you, Stephan, but being adopted and orphaned, there was a big struggle with abandonment for a long time that I didn't realize that it was ever an issue. I did a session with a lady. I don't know if you're familiar with Carolyn Miss. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. So this is one of her intuitive trainers, and I recently had done a study and she had brought it up. But the journey moving forward and the blessings that I've received, not only having an amazing adopted family and all the good things that have come of that, but also when I turned 50, I connected with my biological family. And I met my biological mom, and I have 2 half-sisters and a half-brother. And I'm blessed in so many ways in that family, because when we connected, the gentleman that was helping me, an investigator out of Texas, and again, coincidence is just the way it I had looked for years and couldn't find her, and there were so many questions about whether or not, back in the 60s, if the names on the documents were even legitimate, and how do you know they didn't even, like the birth name that's on my adoption paper was real, right? So there were so many questions. I went to an event in Philadelphia, and as I was walking down the stairs onto a platform where the convention was, my sciatica kicked in, and I tripped. And I landed in this guy's arms that was like 6'5". He was huge. I was so embarrassed. But, he happened to be a chiropractor. So he's like, are you okay? Is everything all right? And so I shared the story with him and told him what was going on. And he's like, well, look, tomorrow we'll find each other. If you're still having a problem, we'll find some place to correct you. But again, these are just blessings.
I guess he would have been easy to find at 6'5".
Well, it gets better. Again, these are just little blessings that happen in the right time, in the right place. And so I didn't sleep all night. My sciatica, I cried. I was in so much pain. And when he found me in the morning, he said, oh my God, you don't look good. And I was like, I don't feel good. He said, well, on our lunch, let's find some place to adjust you. So lunch came, and I said, well, I've got a table in my room because, traveling so much, my room was pretty big. I've got a table. We could do it there. Well, Stephan, I went up to my room, and I called my husband, and I went, you're not going to believe what I did. I just invited a stranger to my room. What, am I crazy? He's going to come into my, there was like a million thoughts that went through my head. And I said to my husband, you have to stay on the phone with me. So he stayed on the phone with me, and his name is Ben Duke. He's out of Chicago. He's a chiropractor. And he comes to the room, and when I open up the door, he knocks on the door, and when he opens up the door, he's like, standing 3 feet from the door, and he goes, I got to be honest with you. I've never done this before. I was, what part, coming to the room or the chiropractic?
That's funny, yeah.
So he came into the room and looked around, and he's like, no, the table's too high, and the lounge chair wasn't right. And he looked at me, and he put his hands over his head and, looked down, and he says, he goes, I don't know, I hate to say this. He goes, but could you lay face down on the bed? But we ended up having lunch afterwards. He adjusted me. It was beautiful. I found out that he was orphaned, and he had just, his wife had paid to have an investigator look for his family. Unfortunately, they were all incarcerated. And he shared that information with me, the investigator. I waited a couple months after that before I reached out to him, and then he had given me some things to do or try, and it didn't work. But then he said, well, why don't you try your DNA? And that's where it all kind of unfolded. Now, unfortunately, had I not waited that time from when Ben had given me the name of the investigator 2-3 months later, I actually probably would have met my biological father, who had passed away during that time. Because it was only a couple months later that I met my biological family. So, the blessings, again, being conscious and looking at all the different gifts that get put in front of you as ways of leading you in directions that you're supposed to be taking instead of, doing whatever you want, I guess. I don't know. But life has just been blessed in so many ways.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I was blessed to have a foster mother, and I was in a foster home for like 3 years of my childhood, and I still am very close with my foster mother. Just spoke with her yesterday, and yeah, beautiful soul, and what a gift to have had that experience. I didn't think of it as a gift at the time.
Yeah.
I was really resentful for my biological family putting me into a foster care environment, even though there was good reason for it. My grandfather was caring for me, and he had a heart attack, and he couldn't care for me anymore. So there was certainly valid reasons for it happening, but at the time, I didn't take it very well. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, in retrospect, hindsight's 20/20. You can see all these beautiful things. You could see how your heart issue turned into something really amazing and beautiful. I can see how that situation was for my highest and best good. Yeah, it's just beautiful to be able to look back and see these divine interventions and these coincidences that were not coincidental.
Yeah, no, I'm very blessed for Ben to have, stepped into my life. And again, other people and, places that it's put me over the years to get me where I am today. Like even meeting Joe Polish, I met Jim Dew, and Jim Dew has been an absolute blessing for the past, 2.5 years that we've had our relationship and work together. And yeah, it's just, I've written a bestseller, Amazon bestseller, Harness Your Purpose, Power, and Peace. There's just so many things that have come of it. But, can I go back and look at the bad things that have happened or the negative things that have happened? I probably could, but I've conditioned my mind so much that it's almost like they're not even there anymore. You just don't. When the bad things happen, you just, okay, well, what's the outcome that I want from this? And what's the learning that I'm supposed to learn? And then you just keep moving forward.
Yep. Focus forward.
Yep.
I love it. All right. And one last thing I'll just mention in passing here before we close out this episode. You mentioned muscle testing, and I interviewed a while ago now Christian Michelson, and we talked about muscle testing in that interview. It's a really good interview, so I'll include that in the show notes too. Muscle testing is real. It does work, and connects with again that higher self, that part of you that has internal guidance and helps you to see if whatever you're testing, whether it's a supplement that you're holding in your other hand or it's something that you're saying, is true, valid, useful, helpful, or not.
We even, in fact, you're down in Miami, and I think he's pretty much down in that area as well, but the gentleman that I'm to understand that invented all of that was Dr. Ulan, U-L-A-N, nutritional response testing, and he's down in that Miami area. But we actually use it to test our horses as well. And so you can test from human to horse, and so you use your arm as a muscle, and so you can hold different parts of the organs on the horse and then have someone else, push down on your arm, and if it holds strong, then the organ is strong, and if you're holding onto something and the arm goes down, it's impossible to hold it up. You know that there's a deficiency there. And then we use, different vitamins to help the horses just like we help humans.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another way to utilize muscle testing.
I do it. Often when I'm trying new things, I will allow my body to be a pendulum. Are you familiar with pendulums?
Yes, I am. I'm curious to hear what you're about to say. That sounds really cool.
Well, so like when I get my vitamins every month from the from the health center, every week I fill up my little pill case. But before I fill it up, I will put, I'll hold the bottle first and ask if I still need this. If I need it, my body will tip forward, and if I don't need it, my body will tip back. So if I need it, now I put a bunch of pills in my hand, and how many pills do I need a day? And if I don't need that many pills, my body will tip back, and if I do, my body will tip forward. And so every pill I do it with. You can do it. I mean, anyone can test themselves. Like hold a banana when you think it's really healthy, but yet it's one of the highest sugar content pieces of fruit. And if you have a problem with sugar, I guarantee you, your body's going to be like, whoa, and come back. And, it's asking that inner part of your soul or that inner part of your body, is this healthy for me? Is this what I need? And if it's no, then I put it down. It was
very cool.
It was through muscle testing. I had suffered when I lived in New Jersey with sinuses. I was on sinus medicine, prescribed sinus medicine, nasal sprays, over-the-counter Tylenol sinus, had severe, sinus infections where I'd be on Augmentin like 3 or 4 times a year, and then when that wasn't working, I was on 30 days, not Augmentin, Z-Pak. I was on Z-Pak 3 or 4 times, and then I would be on Augmentin for like 30 days, and like nothing was working. And so the first time I met a gentleman that did muscle testing, he said to me I was allergic to grain. And so I went for years of testing and had all those little needles put in my arm, and they could never find anything that I was allergic to, but yet I had all these allergy medicines that I was on. So we cut out all the allergy medicine, and I took grain out of my diet, and from that point on, my body just got healthier, because even though I thought I was eating healthy, like, say, for instance, I'd have a nice ciabatta sandwich with arugula and mozzarella and olive oil or whatever. The ciabatta bread was no good for me. I would have a waffle in the morning with peanut butter, The waffle wasn't good for me. So, being raised Italian, you always had bread or pasta or whatever. So even though I thought I was eating healthy, my body still wasn't healthy because of the grain that I was putting in my system. So I detoxed myself from grain, and then I didn't need medicine anymore.
Wow. That reminds me that my stepmom stopped eating tomatoes and other, what are those types of...
Like a diverticulitis?
Nightshade vegetable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So nightshade vegetables are problematic for her.
Interesting.
So she cut those out of her diet, and it really reduced inflammation and all these other chronic ailments that she was suffering from. So that was really a great breakthrough for her.
If it doesn't,
the other thing,
if it doesn't come from the earth, then don't eat it. That's the way I look at it.
If it comes from a box at a big factory, that's probably not the best thing for you. I do eat some processed foods still, but since I've been on this metabolic reset, I have been eating only 4 ounces of fruit, 4 ounces of vegetables, and 4 ounces of protein, well, actually a little bit more of the protein, because I don't eat meat, so I need a bit more to make up for that. I do that twice a day, and it's within an 8-hour eating window, and I don't snack, and I fast for 16 hours of the day. And like I said, I've been doing this for 25 days now, and the results are phenomenal. I mean, I got before and after photos, and I'm not even through the program, and it's like, wow, I couldn't believe it when I saw those photos.
Did you get the what do they call that? The flu from
No.
The detox flu?
No.
A lot of times when you're detoxing, and you're going on that, like cleanses, 7, 10, 20.
You release some stuff that is not healthy, and then you get some symptoms. Yep.
Yeah. Well, but
I didn't feel that.
Probably because of the whole India trip too.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyways, but that India trip was the first one was in 2012. That was when I had my biggest breakthroughs in early 2013. Anyway. So the last thing I want to share about muscle testing before we close out the episode is Jay Lasco, who was referred to me by Aaron Scotty, who created he was the executive producer of the movie Peanut Butter Falcon. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Oh, it's a fabulous movie. It's about a kid with Down syndrome. It's really beautiful, heartwarming, and so he's a Hollywood producer, and it was just such a powerful spiritual conversation we had on this podcast. Anyways, he referred me to Jay Lasco, and she uses muscle testing on herself while she's working with you remotely over phone or WhatsApp, not video, just a audio call, and she'll be able to access things like past life memories, imprints, areas of your body that have stuck energy and things, just through her own psychic abilities and muscle testing of herself while she's talking with you. It is incredible, and I've referred so many people to her, and everyone but one has raved about her. The one person who didn't actually have a session with her. So, whatever, but we all come to what we need in the timing that is right. So for that person, it's not the right timing.
Yeah.
Anyways, she's amazing, and that happened thanks to Aaron Scotty and that introduction.
Beautiful.
Muscle testing, it's real.
It's real.
Very
it's
cool.
So, non-invasive, inexpensive.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, this was a fabulous, fun, and enlightening conversation. Thank you for that. And if our listener or viewer wants to work with you and the horses at your facility, maybe do a team building exercise or a workshop like the Heart-Centered Sales Program, how do they get in touch? What's your website? All that sort of stuff.
Sure. But the website, the company is Yarcort, YARCORT.com. We're on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, all those different social media platforms, but feel free to reach out there. You can also send me an email at Gina, Gina, at Yarcort, YARCORT.com as well. And yes, we do. In fact, we have a bank on Tuesday. We have a bank that's bringing in their top executives for they're having some issues with communication. So we've got a great day planned for them with catered breakfast and lunch and so forth, and a bunch of horse activity. So it'll be exciting. So if you're struggling with sales, I mean, that's my big thing. Whether or not you're a company that has salespeople or you're a sales agent yourself, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gina, and thank you, listener. This was something that may have been a little bit outside your comfort zone, and I appreciate you being open-minded enough to listen all the way to the end. And now take some action from what you've learned from this conversation from Gina and put it into your life, and I'm sure that you'll get some amazing results. Absolutely. This is your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.